It's an absolute pleasure to welcome author Nancy Churnin to our new series of author interviews. Welcome, Nancy, who is based in Plano, Texas, USA. And thank you so much for taking the time to share two of your books with teachers here in the UK. I believe that the books we're going to be exploring today are called Manjhi Moves a Mountain and Dear Mr. Dickens. I'm so excited and can't wait to hear more about them. Fantastic. And before we get stuck into those books that just look, oh my gosh, I can't wait. Um, Before we get stuck in, tell us a bit more about how you became a children's writer. How did that happen?
I was a longtime journalist, and through a story I wrote, I met a man who was deaf, who was telling me about the great deaf baseball player, William Hoy, who introduced baseball. He was born when Abraham Lincoln was president, and he wanted to play baseball more than anything else. And they said, William, how can you play? You're deaf. You can't hear the umpires. So he taught them his language, sign language. Many people don't know that the signs for safe and out are American Sign Language. So I
Oh,
he was sad that most people hearing and deaf didn't know this story. So I said, well, what if I write a story for kids and then they will spread the word? And so I just made that promise. And then I had never written a children's book before. I'd been, as I said, a longtime journalist, and I thought, how hard could it be? And then I went on a journey. It took me years to figure out how to write a children's book, but this became my first one. And that in many ways became my template, because I wanted to write about somebody the kids didn't know about, who had done something wonderful, who had persevered against the odds to make his or her dream come true, and also made the world a better place. And that's what led me to Manjhi, who, again, the kids had never heard of Manjhi, never had a picture book about him, and he had persevered to try to make the world a better place by chiseling a path to a 300-foot mountain.
wow. So those kinds of stories, no doubt for you, takes a lot of historical research. It sounds to me that the things that inspire you are real life stories, things that people can relate to, but that's actually fact. And you're translating that for children. So can you just tell us a little bit more about your research process? I mean, how do you find the characters that inspire your stories?
A great question. So the first one, as I said, was pretty much handed to me by my friend who was deaf, and I was trying to make his dream come true. And I just went through, with his help, he became my researcher, provided me with all of these articles from the 19th century, and it taught me so much about deaf history, and I even learned a little sign language. That was the education there. With Manjhi, there wasn't much written. So I had to go and I studied video interviews with him, and it was fascinating. And I consulted a professor at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas, Texas, who had been to India many times and knew the area and could give me an education about how vast India is, how many languages, how many religions, how people would have dressed differently in the different places. Really gave me a sense of how Manjhi would have lived. So in each case, sometimes I'm able to consult books, professors, newspaper articles. In the case of Dear Mr. Dickens, I actually consulted professors, experts on Dickens, including a wonderful professor in England, and was able to also get a historical picture of my main subject, Eliza Davis, who wrote to Charles Dickens.
Wow.
Yes, from the University of Southampton, from their archives collection, very generously gave me permission. There's an photograph of the actual Eliza Davis in the back of the book.
Amazing, amazing links to British history as well, which I am certain that will sit very well with teachers in terms of connections with the curriculum. So, out of interest, how many other books have you written?
I have 10 in all. 8 are out, and 2 more are coming out in October. Dear Mr. Dickens is one. It's coming out October 1st. And And Henrietta and A Queen to the Rescue, the story of Henrietta Zoll, the founder of Hadassah, is coming out October 5th. And again, these are all true stories, as you mentioned. Oh, I have to just throw this out, that I have one more that I think that the teachers in England may particularly like. You know how everyone's talking about Queen Charlotte now because of Bridgerton? Well, this is The Queen in the First Christmas Tree. I do believe it's the first picture book about Queen Charlotte, and a little known story of how she introduced the first Christmas tree to England at Windsor Castle in 1800 at a party for 100 children. And again, you ask, how did I do my research? With a royal historian who is a university lecturer in Canada, who is thanked in the book.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And I can personally say that I will be purchasing that book. I'm always looking for really good Christmas books, and that one has definitely grabbed my eye. So thank you for the recommendation. Okay, I would love for you to give us a synopsis of the books that you plan to share with us today. You've already told us a bit about Manjhi Moves a Mountain and what happens there. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Dear Mr. Dickens book and what that's all about?
Well, Dear Mr. Dickens, it's a little known story about a woman named Eliza Davis. She is a Jewish woman who immigrated to England from Jamaica, and she admired Charles Dickens so much. She lived in his time. She loved his work. She admired his big heart, how the books that he would write, like Oliver Twist, would make people fight for the rights of children who were poorly treated in these workhouses. But there was one group that she felt was not treated well by Mr. Dickens, and that was the Jewish people. And as a matter of fact, at that time in England and in years preceding, which you'll find out a little bit more in the back matter of the history, there was a lot of anti-Semitism in England at that time. I mean, it's hard to realize now because England has changed so much. But she and Charles Dickens were among the reasons England changed. She wrote to him complaining about his portrayal of Fagin, the Jewish moneylender, and he was a thief and had a, he was a terrible character in Oliver Twist, and he was the only Jewish character. So she felt that gave people a bad impression of what Jewish people are all about. And at first he was a little offended when she wrote to him, but then they started a correspondence and he began to see her point of view. She is the reason that he created the kindly Mr. Rhea in Our Mutual Friend, which was his last published book. So this is a little bit about the story about speaking up and the power of speaking up. Here she was, she's nobody famous. She's anybody you've never heard her name. Eliza Davis? No, you haven't heard her name. But everybody can speak up when they see something wrong, even to someone they respect and admire. She respected and admired Charles Dickens, and she wrote a letter. I hope this book encourages kids to write when they see something wrong. And as a matter of fact, I would like to tell you, Carla, every one of my books has a project. And the project for Dear Mr. Dickens will be encouraging kids to write to somebody when they see an injustice and to ask for that wrong to be righted.
Wow. That is an amazing feat. I mean, when you think about that, you're being inspired as a reader to become a writer, which in itself is quite amazing, because you're getting that motivation, that inspiration from the text itself, that translates into real life and connective writing, in that you are reaching for purpose. I think that there is no greater thing when it comes to becoming a writer than writing with a purpose. And certainly it sounds to me that your books are books with a purpose that will inspire children to not just read, but to also write. That's an amazing thing. So thank you so much for summarizing all of that for us. And you've also kind of knocked the next question on the head about what you'd like children to enjoy most about your books. Those real life moral lessons, and that call to action I think are two things that children will find absolutely fascinating when reading your story. So thank you so much for sharing that. So as you're aware, reading for pleasure is the core when it comes to raising attainment across the national curriculum. Teachers are always looking for books to hook children into reading for pleasure, reading more and reading widely. One of the things that's high on the agenda at the moment is the underrepresentation of minority characters in books. The CLPE has recently conducted research around representation, and while we've improved, they have shown us that there is still more work to be done. What I found particularly wonderful about your books, Nancy, is the wide variety of characters that you have chosen to focus on. And I think that that's one of the things that teachers will absolutely love about all of your books, that it's an opportunity to not just focus on great moral lessons and great call for action, but also that it's done through a variety of diverse characters from different parts of the world. So straight away, I've already picked up on huge curriculum connections that are essential to create very wide and diverse readers, and to inspire other children of diverse backgrounds to see themselves in a book, which in itself is such a blessing. Is there anything else in terms of the development of reading skills that you think that your books will bring to the classroom setting?
I believe in terms of the classroom skills, I think one thing they're going to pick up on in terms of the writing is you're going to see is certain refrains, and they're going to be interactive. So for instance, Manjhi, which again is the story of a man who lived in a poor village. It was so poor that they didn't have a school for the kids, hospital for the sick. You had to climb a 300-foot mountain to get to the next village. And he gets the idea of taking a worn hammer and chiseling that mountain. Takes him 22 years, but he chisels a path through the mountain. And you're going to see as you read the book,
Wow.
there's going to be the refrain, hold, aim, swing, and the kids say it with me. So as a matter of fact, I'll get to the point. And what did Manjhi do? Hold, aim, swing, and they can feel they are doing it with Manjhi. And it's the power of words to bring
Amazing.
us together so they can feel they are doing this with Manjhi. And that works not only as for reading, reading and phonetics, but also because I want them to feel like Manjhi. The other thing that my books all have in common is they're pretty much, with the exception of maybe the Queen, but there's something special about that. But for most of them, they're very ordinary people, just like you and me, and they're making a difference because they have a dream, they persevere, and they have a determination to make the world better for others. That's another one of my goals, that the children will be inspired to become heroes and heroines of their own lives.
So great themes of empathy there that I'm picking up, and I love the fact that you referred to the fact that there are refrains, but the refrains are not just there for fluency or phonics. They're also there to essentially enable those children to put themselves in the character's shoes. Empathy is one of the greatest building blocks when it comes to developing inference and being able to understand what's shown in the book but not told. So thank you very much. I noticed that Manjhi has a sticker on it. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Oh yes, I am so honored. Manjhi is the winner of the South Asia Book Award. It is the National Council for Social Studies notable book. It won the Ann Izzard Storyteller's Choice Award. It is right now this year up for the Sakura Medal. It is a finalist in Japan, where the kids are reading the Sakura Medal finalists right now. It is the International Literary Association on the Choices reading list. It was a Silver Eureka from the California
Wow.
Reading Association. Yeah, so some of these, it has won more medals than are on these than are on this book. You'll find 4 here, but it's won actually many more.
That just shows how much this book has connected globally. That is a fantastic list of awards. That's no doubt well deserved. So another one from my bookshelf as well. So that's got to go there. So thank you so much. So I think at this stage, having heard so much about your books, Nancy, I'm going to hand over to you for you to do your read aloud section from whichever book you choose from first. And I'm sure the teachers are excited and the children are excited to hear a bit more about the characters in your books.
Thank you so much, Paula. I'm going to pick a section from the middle of Manjhi. Day after day, Manjhi clutched the hammer and chisel. Hold, aim, swing. Night after night, he slid dusty fingers into the hole, measuring 1 foot, 2 feet. After a week, he could crouch inside. 4 feet, 5 feet. You're crazy, people told him. A man can't change a mountain. It's there before he's born and after he dies. But Manjhi could see something they couldn't. The parting of the mountain into 2 great halves with a road in between. A road where people could get to work, to market, to school, even to the hospital more easily. Nothing could stop him. Not words, not time, not even the mountain, which sent chips and powder tumbling down his shoulders, whitening his hair. And the next one, I don't have in front of me because it's not printed yet, so I'm reading this actually off my phone. Dear Mr. Dickens. Think of someone you admire. What would you do if that person said or wrote something unfair? Would you speak up? Would you risk getting the person angry? Eliza Davis did. Charles Dickens was the most famous writer of Eliza's time. English people from all walks of life eagerly paid 2 pence for his weekly magazine all the year forward to read the latest installments of his stories. Later, he published the stories as books that passengers bought at bookshops and railway stations. But what made Charles Dickens a hero in Eliza's eyes is that he used the power of his pen to help others. When he wrote about children forced to labor in workhouses, people demanded change. When his readers were moved to tears by tales of families struggling in desperate, dirty conditions, they gave what they could to charities, as did Eliza. Yes, Dickens had a heart as big as England, overflowing with compassion for everyone, except Eliza remembered when she read Dickens' book, Oliver Twist, about a poor orphan. She had loved it at first until she got to chapter 8, where she read about the old shriveled Jew teaching Oliver to steal. Eliza was Jewish. Charles Dickens described the Jew as dishonest, selfish, cruel, and ugly. The character's name was Fagin, but over and over, Dickens wrote the Jew, the Jew, the Jew. Each time the word hurt like a hammer on her heart.
Wow. That is such an amazing story. And I'm going to say something, Nancy. I have read Oliver Twist, and it did not even stand out that this is what this was. What a reflection. That's something that's really that shook me a bit. Because how often, sometimes these things are written in classic books. We kind of take it for granted or dismiss it and say, oh, it's a part of the time, without really looking beyond what these words actually mean. Some serious research that can be done there, and certainly a book that I would recommend for Key Stage 2, particularly upper Key Stage 2, so that they can really get into the sensitive issues around this form of discrimination that was clearly in the book Oliver Twist. That intertextual connection as well is a fantastic way, because they can then go to that chapter. Is that really there? that rereading will definitely be done with a different lens on, and that's absolutely fascinating for me. So now you've prompted me to actually go and dig out my Oliver Twist, because I need to read that again.
And I'm hoping with Dear Mr. Dickens, you, as I said, one of the kind professors who's from England, asked me to do. He asked me to reach out to the Dickens Museum. So I'm hoping that there will be other places to also obtain this book. And I just have to say that after learning about Eliza Davis and her correspondence with Charles Dickens, I was always a Dickens fan, but I became more of a Dickens fan when I learned about how he was listened and his heart changed, and how much he actually did, not only by creating a sympathetic Jewish character in Our Mutual Friend, but also in his magazine. He was one of the reasons. There are other people too played a big role, but Charles Dickens was actually played a big role in changing people's perception of Jewish people and in making England more inclusive place. So it was really a turning point.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing your wonderful books with teens. It is always such a pleasure to hear the author's voice behind children's books. Finally, can you just share with us where your books can be purchased here in the UK?
Thank you again for asking that. What I was very happy to find out that Waterstones is about to will be carrying Manjhi Moves a Mountain starting in April. Other than that, all my books are all available on Amazon.uk. And I hope that maybe that this will lead to children in England participating in some of these projects, which I post pictures of what the kids do on my pages on my website, nancychurnin.com.
So we definitely look forward to hearing more about your books as your writing journey continues. No doubt you will end up with so many more as you come across these fascinating characters that have made real life changes in the world that we live in. So to our teachers, I'd like you to check out the links to Manjhi Moves a Mountain and Dear Mr. Dickens in this video, and certainly do reach out to the other links we will place for all the amazing books that Nancy Churnin has written for children. And thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us here at Readmaster for UK Teachers, which is the home of the author's voice. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Hella. It's such a joy to share with you and with the teachers. I appreciate the opportunity.